Wow. What a joy it is to stand here in front of you after this first day of sharing, learning, collaborating, and most importantly, building friendship. I'm Adrian, project manager at WILDLABS and coordinator of ICTC 2026. Today, we have traded ideas, stories, and a lot of energy. And I know that I am the toll between you, drinks, dinner, and a well-earned rest. So instead of a long speech, please come on a journey with me. It's a journey made of stories. Stories that are connected by technology, nature, and creatures that I find beautiful, moth and bees. Let's start this journey in Panama, where Andrew, Hubert, Keith, their team, are building a suite of tools to monitor insight at scale. So please, welcome on stage Dr. Andrew Kutmeyer, Director of Dina Lab and Associate Professor at the University of Washington.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to tell you about, I'm Andy. That's me, that's my mouth. That's an ant sensor built into a leaf, which is kind of fun. Me and my cool partner, Kit, we run a little thing called Digital Naturalism Laboratories, or DynaLab, or DinaLab, or whatever you want to call it. It's a little humble, solar-powered, half of a house, prototyping workshop that makes open science tools that are primarily used in the wild. It's based in the rainforest in Panama. Who here has been to Gamboa? Woo! Gamboa, okay, a couple. And we run art and science events there. We teach field courses for designers. We bring field biologists into design courses. And we run conferences, experimental, open source conferences that actually take place in interesting natural areas for 5 to 8 weeks at a time with local partners, kind of recreating the experience of being in a field site, but with field biologists and designers and people making maker spaces. We have very limited funding. We don't have salaries. We just kind of help sustain ourselves by doing freelance jobs however we can. And most of the time that we're doing all of this conservation, science tools, it's a lot of just our own volunteer time. But most of the time we're doing freelance jobs like, for instance, we make projection map wedding cakes for kind of wealthy people in Florida. That was like 80% of our funding for the past 7 years. So finding very weird jobs all over the place. But as many of you know, even though we have very limited funding, the wonderful thing that keeps us in the game is that field biologists, conservationists, you all have endless interesting, very strange challenges, like a robot that climbs a tree because the canopy's too thick to fly a drone in, butterfly strength testing devices, floating fishing bat sensors that also need to be disguised as garbage so that they don't get stolen, even trying to make open source hummingbird tools, because there was like one dude who made these banding tools for hummingbirds in the world, and he like died recently. So trying to get these things out to people. And that brings up a point. Everything that we do at our lab, it's entirely open source. As the saying goes, open science is just science done right, done correctly. We need open source tools in order to be able to do science correctly. And so on that note, my buddy Hubert came up to me one day in Panama. And Hubert, in case you don't know Hubert, you may know him from his iNaturalist, because he's often #1 in the world. And he's the kind of guy who will ID tens of thousands of insects for other people just as a hobby. And even he was getting burnt out at his job doing manual insect identification. This guy He was sorting what I'm calling bug soup, little jars of bugs that were collected in kill traps, pulling them apart, looking at each one through a microscope, spending 8-hour days, 7-day weeks for 7 months to identify 72,000 different creatures. He was getting a little tired of this, and he found this paper by Bjerg et al. That was like, hey, what if we use cameras and computer vision? Let's try to use a Raspberry Pi and do that instead. And so Hubert was like, can we build one ourselves? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we built one, and it worked. It was super cool, like as a concept, right? Because I know many of you have the same experience. You've shoved electronics into a Tupperware, taped different batteries and stuff together, and it kind of worked. But it wasn't quite robust enough for someone like Hubert to carry up a mountain, go deep into the jungle with, right? And so we kept iterating. We kept building different versions of it, putting it out into the field, seeing what the rainforest, what the tropics can do to these devices, because it will destroy things in ways you never even thought possible. But we ended up with this thing. It's a bright light. It attracts insects. It photographs them. And we even made open source tools that you can use on an old crummy laptop that will organize and ID things, validate them all locally, and let someone like Hubert go from spending 7 months to trying to identify 70,000 bugs to doing the same kind of work in about 5 days, which is amazing. So Hubert's happy about that. It turned out this wasn't just a Hubert problem, though. Lots of other people were like, you know what? Insects are actually half of all the species on Earth, like bacteria, plants, everything. Half of those things we've given names to are insects. And you can use insects as kind of a really high-resolution sensor to see subtle changes that are happening in large areas that may be degraded by farming or trying to be restored. And so, because everything we do is open source, we document the hell out of stuff, and we try to show people how to build this whole thing, partially so that I can remember how to rebuild this thing, right? And a cool thing that happens is because you can build it yourself, lots of people started building these things. So we've had scientists build these things, non-scientists. We even had kids in libraries build these things. And the cool thing is, when you have lots of people doing this thing, you can have this kind of iterative community testing along with kind of the field testing. And anyone here who builds stuff and makes stuff knows that this is really the most terrifying thing to do. Give your thing to a different person who's going to find every other way to press the wrong buttons to do everything. But it really helps refine your tools to see what kind of data they get, what kind of blockages they get, what's holding them back in the way that they can try to achieve their own really unique individual goals. And so it's fun to see what all these different people are actually able to make and the challenges they come up with, like doing amphibious deployments where you have to use a kayak to get to a thing. So you got to make it light enough and waterproof enough to get out there. There's a group who we put it under the ocean to monitor coral instead of moths and insects. We have a PhD student in Australia, Bree, who sets up moth boxes during the day and moonlights as Bree J. Flannel Moth, doing DJ sets with live visualizations of her data that she gets from the moths. And even really big expeditions, like can we put 20 of these and monitor an entire mountain at the same time, simultaneously? And what kind of subtle changes can we get from things that are only 100 meters apart? So we end up with these devices all over the world. People are using them. And now suddenly we get a lot more demand. People are like, hey, we built 5 of these, but Andy, can you get me 50? And I'm like, oh, this is scary. This is starting to get a little big. But so we buckled down, and I started using a cool open source tool called KiCad. Shout out to KiCad, anyone? Woo! Making open source circuits that can be manufactured in mass. So they're still open source. Anyone can make these, but you can give them to a factory. You can press a button, and they come made for you. And this lets us do things like build a much more professional, robust device that just yesterday we were doing a workshop here at ICTC. People built these things. We deployed them at the Modern Art Museum across the street. And we even got data. This is the data from yesterday, which is really cool to be able to take a thing from scratch, right? And be able to see, look, there was bugs. And so doing this kind of open manufacturing design made the thing cheaper, let us build a thing in 2-ish hours, the electronics, instead of 2 days just for the electronics. And it's really cool to be able to see a thing that you're making go from the fun, lovable Tupperware stage to a professional, reliable device. And because it's documented, because it's shared openly with communities, it lets you kind of take these concepts from little bits and seeing how they kind of work together and let you kind of scale a project or an idea to new places. So go open source, go science, go technology, go conservation, share things, yay!
Wow. What a great talk, Andy. I was expecting that, and it was even better. We have seen what passion, open data, motivation to go sharing with the community, hearing from users can bring in conservation technology. And that's what we wanted to bring you tonight. Let's continue the story now. Let's go in Peru, just here in one of the most biodiverse forests on Earth. Here, something has happened recently, a first for history, and I would like to welcome Miriam Delgado from Amazon Research International on stage to tell us more about that. Welcome, Miriam.
¿Cómo están? Buenas tardes. Bien, esta historia comienza justo en la Amazonía peruana. ¿Ustedes han oído hablar de las abejas sin aguijón? ¿Sí? Para las que la conocen, bueno, acá tenemos a escala las abejas sin aguijón y para las que no, se las presento aquí. Estas abejas justo tienen la particularidad de que no tienen un aguijón o tienen un aguijón trunco. Por eso es que son mucho más amigables para las personas, más amigables para las comunidades. Las abejas sin aguijón datan de hace millones de años, ¿no? Son nativas de los trópicos, viven en todos los países tropicales desde México, pasando Centroamérica, Perú, Colombia, Ecuador y la selva de Bolivia. Es por ello que tenemos en el país, de las 500 especies que se han podido registrar, en el país tenemos más de 175 especies ya identificadas y también, bueno, tenemos conocimiento de que hay muchas otras especies más. ¿Cuál es la particularidad de las abejas sin aguijón? Como les dije, son abejas que no pican, abejas amigables para la comunidad y sobre todo que tienen un producto de su propio nido que es el polen y la miel. Una miel muy valorada por las comunidades nativas. Las comunidades, por ejemplo, ayánicas, las comunidades cucamas, que ellas representan en esto, le dan el valor a la ciencia por el valor cultural, ¿no? Para ellos la abeja es un guardián, ¿no? Es su ancestro, es un espíritu que los protege. Por esta misma razón, desde Amazon Research International, nosotros, enfocando la ciencia con el conocimiento ancestral, le damos ese valor a las abejas. ¿Por qué? Porque las abejas nos ayudan a polinizar. Son los principales polinizadores, en este caso de la Amazonía peruana. Son los principales polinizadores de especies nativas y de frutos como nosotros conocemos, como el café, el cacao, que también son muy valorados. Esta miel es medicinal y ha ayudado también, ¿no? Tiene propiedades antiinflamatorias y ya tenemos estudios sobre análisis bioquímicos al respecto que ayuda En propiedades antiinflamatorias ha podido también comprobarse que ha ayudado en el COVID-19, en enfermedades autoinmunes e incluso ha ayudado también para problemas de infertilidad, ¿no? Por eso es que, de acuerdo a los relatos que se da en las comunidades, podemos también ver la comprobación científica. ¿Cómo nosotros embonamos este conocimiento científico con la ciencia? A través de la tecnología, que ha sido una herramienta fundamental en el principal proyecto que tenemos, que es el mapeo de abejas. Se ha realizado este mapeo en el distrito de Satipo, que pertenece a la región Junín, ¿no? Y se ha podido realizar esa identificación tanto de colmenas nativas que están en los troncos de estos árboles, como también en las colmenas sostenibles que ya tienen las comunidades en los espacios que se llaman meliponarios. ¿Por qué razón mapear las abejas? ¿Por qué razón identificar los árboles donde ellas anidan? ¿Por qué razón saber en qué espacio se encuentran? Porque uno, tenemos que ser conscientes de que las abejas son, como les dije, los principales polinizadores, son especies nativas y ayudan justamente a que las especies de flora puedan regenerarse, ¿no? Alrededor de 200.000 metros cuadrados de un meliponario se puede ver la conservación de estas especies. Y esas especies no solamente ayudan como alimento en sus flores para las abejas, sino también son base para otras especies. Nosotros, a través de ese conocimiento que nos brinda la ciencia, que nos brinda el conocimiento ancestral, hemos podido también elaborar material que sirve para la educación intercultural para las propias comunidades. Por eso hemos podido obtener el año pasado, ya tenemos en el repositorio de la Biblioteca Nacional del Perú el manual de meliponicultura, que también sirve de ayuda no solo a los meliponicultores, sino también al público en general, que necesita también saber a qué se refieren las abejas sin aguijón y a qué también se refiere la meliponicultura como actividad económica sostenible. Todo esto ha podido darse, ese trabajo ha podido reflejarse en diversos medios como el New York Times. Se ha podido revisar que todo ese trabajo científico ha podido impulsar mediante los informes técnicos y tener eco en ciertas municipalidades del país, como la municipalidad de Satipo y la municipalidad de Nauta, que el año pasado han podido dar normas legales que protegen a las abejas sin aguijón, ¿no? Tenemos ahora ordenanzas municipales que dan la declaratoria de derechos de la naturaleza para las abejas sin aguijón y ven la meliponicultura sostenible también en las reservas de los espacios donde están estas municipalidades. Ahora podemos decir que las abejas son uno de los animales que tienen derechos y es a la vez el primer insecto a nivel mundial que tiene derechos y es sujeto de derecho. Esto ha podido reflejarse también en el medio como The Guardian y hemos podido también tener en Abas la petición con ya de más de 380.000 firmas a lo que va a la fecha, ¿no? Bueno, nosotros, como les dije, desde Amazon queremos que la ciencia escuche, queremos también que la tecnología esté al servicio del territorio y sobre todo que el conocimiento ancestral sea reconocido. Esta triada de factores hace que el trabajo que podamos realizar, no solo nosotros, sino también todos ustedes, sea real y sea clave. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Miriam. Muchas gracias. Right, we just now have seen the reality of what it means to, again, connect indigenous people, local communities, technology to implement policy and sustain the conservation of the insect. These two stories, they bring together technology, conservation, nature, insects, but one thing that has not been mentioned so far. They are bonded together by components, one of our programs, two of our programs, the Awards and the Boring Fund. These funding opportunities are managed by Henry Rees, that I will welcome on stage so he can tell us more about that. Welcome, Henry. Enjoy, man.
Thanks so much, Adrian. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar and so many new faces here. Thanks so much for coming out for our event. It's absolutely amazing. But let me start by telling you about something that we've all experienced. Around the world, innovators and practitioners are building and deploying tools that could transform how we protect nature. But without the flexible funding to test, adapt, and deploy them, many of those ideas never actually leave the ground. That reality has led to the creation of the WILDLABS Awards in 2024. The program was born directly from a community need, grassroots funding that helps conservationists adopt existing technologies and develop and scale new technologies. And what started as a response to that gap has quickly grown into a powerful catalyst for action. And in 2025, we ran the awards again, seeing a growth in the number and the diversity of applications from all over the world. With support from ARM, we distributed grants of $10,000 and $50,000 to amazing projects like the ones you've just heard about today, fantastic projects, initiatives that genuinely bridge innovation and impact. These awards are helping turn bold ideas into working solutions and building a future where conservation innovation doesn't exist, but also thrives as a community as well. So that all sounds pretty exciting, right? And we're right to celebrate innovation in our sector. But as we know, working with tech is not always as exciting as it seems. You know, like what if our equipment breaks? What if we're buried in technical debt? And what if we just don't have the time to analyze our data, as is always the case? Sometimes the important stuff in our field isn't particularly interesting, and sometimes what we need is more obvious. You know, it's the more boring solution to solve our problems. And that's where the Boring Fund comes in. I think we can all agree the branding speaks for itself. So you might be thinking, who would consider creating something like this and why? Well, across our community, we heard the same story again and again, that the most essential parts of conservation technology work are the hardest to fund, almost always. And this is something that we at WILDLABS have experienced as well. Not the flashy pilots or the shiny prototypes, but the training materials, the documentation, and the infrastructure that keeps everything running. These pieces are often dismissed as too boring for traditional grants. And yet they're exactly what allow innovation to survive, to spread, and to scale. When these foundations are weak, the entire ecosystem struggles. But when we invest in them, everybody benefits. Projects become easier to adopt, knowledge travels faster, and technology becomes more accessible, and to everyone who needs it. So supporting the so-called boring work, it should never be an afterthought, because it's always the backbone of a more resilient, sustainable future for conservation technology. And that's why we launched these grant programs, to meet the unmet needs of our sector. And in just 2 years, we've seen an extraordinary surge in demand. In 2025 alone, we received over 1,250 applications across these opportunities. And that level of response sends a clear message that we've uncovered a critical gap for funding need in our sector, especially for the foundational work that's been overlooked for far too long. And in those same 2 years, together with our partners, we've supported 43 amazing projects spanning 42 countries, with 171 innovators working on some of the most critical conservation challenges of our time, using tools ranging from underwater cameras to autonomous saliva samplers. But those numbers only tell a tiny part of the story, and each project represents real people, real places, and real impact. Teams turning ideas into action and building solutions that truly matter on the ground. And that's something that I'm delighted to show you today.
I was getting emotional watching this video when, yeah, remember 2 years ago I was hired to do the first co-auditing awards before Henry took the lead. And this project were just ideas, seeing hundreds of applications, and now here we are watching their amazing project. And these projects are just a glimpse of what you can do, what they have done, what they have achieved, and what you will achieve. This project also would not have never been the reality of this funding without a person that has been transformative for Wild Labs over the past 10 years, and without whom we would not be present today. So please welcome on stage Rosalie Tribe from ARM, who leads social impact partnerships at ARM. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. What a privilege to be here with you all today. So we've just traveled across Central and South America, from moths in Panama to stingless bees in Peru. And through the film that we've just watched, we've traveled even further across continents, landscapes, and communities connected by conservation technology. Different ecosystems, different technologies, different local contexts. And yet, there's this common thread. Each of these projects has been supported by the Wild Labs Awards or the Boring Fund, a partnership between Wild Labs and ARM. But more importantly, each of these projects represents something much bigger. The ingenuity, the persistence, and the collaboration that defines this community. And that's what I want to focus on today. I'm Rosalie Tribe. I lead our social impact and innovation partnerships at ARM, and my role sits at the intersection of technology and global challenges, working with social enterprises, INGOs, and not-for-profits to explore how advanced technologies, including AI, can strengthen real-world programs. And at its heart, my work is really about ensuring the future of computing works for everyone, everywhere. So, who is ARM? Can I have a quick show of hands if anyone in this room has ever used or owns ARM technology? Thank you. Yeah. So ARM doesn't manufacture drones or conservation devices. We design the processor architecture that sits inside them. So if you have a smartphone in your pocket, it almost certainly runs on ARM. If you deploy acoustic sensors in remote forests, if you're running AI models on low-power edge devices, or analyzing biodiversity data in the cloud, it's very likely that ARM technology is inside that system. And more than 325 billion ARM-based chips have been shipped to date. And we focus on scalable, power-efficient computing because intelligence increasingly needs to happen everywhere, not just in data centers. And in conservation, performance per watt isn't a technical detail. It determines whether a solution works off-grid, survives in harsh environments, and remains operational over time. And when you operate at that foundational layer, you have a responsibility to support the systems that are being built on top of it. So at ARM, we align our business growth with environmental and social progress. And in our social impact and innovation work, we focus on 3 areas: so education, health, and climate and nature. And everything we do starts with a real-world problem, not a technology looking for a use case. And since 2015, we've worked in long-term co-created partnerships with not-for-profits and social enterprises, combining our funding, our technical expertise, and our people power. And we don't operate in a sort of a typical donor-grantee model. We like to work alongside the innovation teams with our partner organizations and test what frontier technologies, including AI, can really realistically achieve in their programs. And we learn together. Solutions are co-created and designed with communities, not imposed on them. And that philosophy is why Wild Labs has felt like a very natural partnership for us for the last 10 years. And I brought a few photos to show you what this partnership has actually looked like over the years. It's been field visits, workshops, awards moments, meeting rhinos, testing ideas, and learning together. But when I was putting this slide together, I realized something, or rather someone, was missing from my photos. And I couldn't find any of them. And this is one very important person who somehow doesn't appear in a single photo. I don't know why. And I'd like to fix that today. This person is a huge part of the reason why we're here today. So, Adrian, can you just join me on stage for a moment so we can finally get some photographic evidence that we are in the same place at the same time? So, we are going to take a quick selfie with you all in it. My arm's not long enough to get you all. Woohoo! Thanks, Adrian. It's now documented. And this partnership has never been about logos on slides. It's been about the people, about the conversations, about shared problem solving, and a healthy handful of wildlife sightings, and a lot of trust. In 2015, United for Wildlife, with support from Google.org and ARM, formally launched WILDLABS as a global conservation technology network. The goal wasn't to invent new conservation technology, but to connect the people already innovating and to close the innovation gaps, to break down the silos, and importantly, to try and accelerate this shared learning. And over the past 10 years, that ecosystem has grown because conservationists, technologists, and communities, you, have made it meaningful. And as we heard from Jonathan this morning, we are facing unprecedented interconnected crises, from biodiversity loss and climate change to global instability. The mission is clear, the urgency is real. What is changing is not the mission, it's the toolkit. Technology is not the solution on its own, but it's an increasingly critical part of how conservation operates in monitoring, enforcement, modeling, communication, and community engagement. The question is not whether technology has a role, it's how we ensure it's accessible, it's durable, it's inclusive, and it's locally grounded. What gives me optimism goes beyond the technology. It's all the people that are building and applying it. And this room is representing field biologists adapting tools to local conditions, engineers refining hardware in difficult environments, data scientists improving species detection models, and community leaders ensuring that solutions are culturally relevant and sustainable. Innovation in this sector is not driven from the top down. It's driven by practitioners responding to ecological reality. ARM's role is simply to enable that work through infrastructure, through partnership, and through long-term commitment. And we're one part of a much larger system that we all have a role to play. Let me acknowledge something that many of you experience directly. The constraint in this sector is often not ingenuity, it's sustained capital. Every round of the WildLabs Awards and the Boring Fund demonstrates more and more credible, field-ready, community-led solutions that can be supported. If conservation technology is increasingly embedded in biodiversity protection, and it is, then funding should not be experimental. No single organization can carry that alone. Ecosystems thrive through shared investment. And I'd encourage any other funders that are in this room to join us, to partner with us, to help advance and scale what this community is already building. At ARM, we remain committed to this partnership and this community, not because biodiversity is trending, but because we believe the future of computing must serve society. In climate and nature, it means enabling power-efficient, AI-capable, locally grounded solutions that scale, and supporting the people that are leading that work. So, as we look ahead, if you're a funder in this room and want to join us, come and speak to us. If you're building on ARM-based technology, please come and visit our booth and connect with our engineering team. And if you're a conservation tech organization ready to take your work to the next stage, pausing for some dramatic effect here, I am delighted to announce that the 2026 Wild Labs Awards are now officially open for applications. So if you're building conservation technology, apply. If you are refining or scaling solutions, apply. And if you're in a position to strengthen this ecosystem, please join us.
Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you. Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you, ARM and your team also for being transformative in the way you interact as a partner. And as you mentioned, really building on the relation with the organization you support and not just providing them money. You provide also technical skills. I see Ed here. I've seen a lot of your engineers today. And yeah, let's this call spark the creativity you have in. There were a QR code that disappeared. Can we put the QR code back? I know it was not part of the plan. So people can connect and interact during the next 3 days, spark ideas, go to the boring aspect of their technology to see if it can be transformed in packaged with project, see if they have a technology to adopt, innovate, or scale. And yeah, I will be looking forward to reading all this application along with the team and many of our partners that are here to see what we will be able to support this time, and encouraging one more time other funders to join Rosalie and this partnership to make it bigger. That's the end of this ceremony. Thank you so much for listening through it. And now it's time to celebrate, going to this closing cocktail. I think we could call it the opening cocktail because it's first day. The opening, the welcome cocktail that is brought to you by Ocean Unmanned. Thank you very much.